It wouldn't be a day for the Eagles if some rumor didn't come out surrounding this team, John. Is that accurate?
Yeah, we know. The Eagles like to be in the headlines. I'm not sure, though, that this is obviously their doing. Although you think about it, Mike, and I'll have my latest mock draft coming out over the weekend, but this is the one part of the year sort of in between free agency. Basically, that's done, at least the high-profile part of it, and in between the real run-up to the draft when everybody's just throwing out misinformation. So this is the clearest snapshot you have of what teams need and what way they're likely to go. From the Eagles' perspective, they don't have the long-term answer at the quarterback position. So if you think Carson Wentz, for instance, is, say, Andrew Luck with athleticism, which I think is a stretch, mind you, you almost have to go up and try to get him and solve this position for the next decade.
Well, if you just told me that, well, then, yeah, I'm doing what – I mean, I just got done about an hour ago talking about how there's no way that I'm mortgaging – look, I'm all about – like last year, I was for the Mariota deal. Even the deal that just was reported a couple of days ago that Kelly shot down, I still would have done that deal. I don't have a problem with getting my guy if I truly believe it. I'm not sure that this is my guy. But if you tell me he's Andrew Luck, then I'm changing my mind.
Well, I agree. And I also agree with your assessment. I don't think he is Andrew Luck. If he was, yeah, I'm mortgaging the future.
Yes.
I wouldn't have done it for Mariota because I didn't feel he was that type of prospect. I think if you look at him,
well, he might not be that type of
prospect.
He might not be that type of prospect for Tennessee, but is he that type of prospect for Chip Kelly?
Well, that's the thing. He was a better fit here, and that's what I said leading up to last year's draft. The one place he would have a chance to go and sort of hit the ground running would be a Chip Kelly offense. Otherwise, he's got to learn, and he's got to learn at the pro level, and that means it's obviously a project. And by definition, you can't mortgage your future for a project. And I think you saw what happened with Tennessee. I mean, a year after having the number 2 overall pick and getting Mariota, where are they? They have the number 1 overall pick. That tells you they weren't very good. And by the way, that instance also points to the fact where I'd be very, very concerned to move up to get Carson Wentz. Because if you're giving up a future first-round pick, you kind of know with any rookie quarterback, you're going to struggle. So if he's out there playing, all of a sudden next year's first-round pick is probably going to be a top 10 pick because that's just the nature of it. And that's a big asset to give up.
The Sports Illustrated suggesting today that the Eagles are one of 4 teams that would be interested in moving up to number 1. What if Wentz, Goff, Paxton Lynch, in no particular order, are there at number 8? Are you okay drafting them at 8, but not at number 1 or 2?
Yeah, I would be perfectly okay with drafting any of those names at number 8. Lynch, it'd probably be a bit of a stretch, but even him, I've talked to scouts who think he has the highest ceiling of the 3, but he's very, very raw, and he's not going to be ready for a while. But if you see what the Eagles have at the quarterback position, they have a short-term bridge, and maybe they can buy some time until he is ready. But, yeah, if they like one of those guys enough and he's sitting there at number 8, I would have no problem with Philadelphia going in that direction. And by the way, I think it's still a possibility because Cleveland is obviously the linchpin of this draft. And if they decide to go quarterback at number 2 overall, and I think they will, even after signing RG3, and they pick Wentz, the hype train is really going this week after his pro day, and everybody is tweeting out his 60-yard throw in the air that was dead on the button. Of course, there's no defenders on the field. Everybody's in shorts. But he's got a strong arm. There's no question about it. If he goes number 2, who's to say Jared Goff's not going to last to number 8 if you like him? Lynch is certainly going to be there. And if Cleveland likes Goff better because he's more pro-ready, and this is an organization that's on its 25th quarterback since 1999, they might want the sure thing. All of a sudden, Wentz might be there at 8. So why are you mortgaging the future? I think it's – I'm not saying the Eagles don't like him because I believe they do, and I believe there's other teams. And if somebody wants him, the only way to guarantee it is to trade to number 1. And we'll see if anybody does that. But what I will say is he is not even close to the prospect Jameis Winston was, and even Mariota.
Well, and again, I would say this, if you really believe that one of those guys is your guy, and you believe that in your heart, I personally don't. I still say this, John. I mean, RG3 signs in Cleveland the other day, and for the deal he got, I would have taken him over Bradford for that deal. I thought they got a good deal for Robert Griffin III. People still ridicule the Redskins for that deal. They've been to the playoffs with Robert Griffin III. The other team, the Rams, had 3 first-rounders and a second-rounder and still haven't made the playoffs with that trade. It shows you how important the quarterback is. The Redskins got to the playoffs because they got the quarterback they needed. Now, he didn't stay healthy, and his career has gone downhill, but they won that deal.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a lot of revisionist history. Nobody was saying the Redskins got taken over the coals after he won 7 straight games in that rookie season. He threw for 3,200 yards. He ran for 800 more. They won 7 straight games. And for all the criticism of RG3 about the lack of leadership, the issues in the locker room, if you remember that playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks, he went out on his shield. He was obviously hurt, and he was playing on a hurt knee, trying to win a football game. And if that's not a leader, I don't know what a leader is. And I think more of the blame for that aspect of his health belongs on the shoulders of Mike Shanahan.
No doubt.
This guy was worlds above a Carson Wentz,
John,
or a Paxton Lynch coming out of college.
You said, by the way, the Browns had 24 starting quarterbacks. How many of them do you think you can name?
Quite a few, because I'm a weirdo. But it starts with Tim Couch.
Nope. Ty Detmer is one.
Spurgeon Wynn is one.
Yes. Doug Peterson is
number one.
Doug Peterson is on that list.
Yeah. Brady Quinn, Brandon Whedon, Johnny Manziel, just the latest.
Yeah.
So they've tried to fix that problem.
Half these guys feel like they played for the Eagles. You got Ty Detmer, Doug Peterson, Jeff Garcia. I mean, no wonder these two teams can't win a Super Bowl.
Austin Davis being the latest. But anytime you go...
Thad Lewis, by the way. Don't forget Thad Lewis.
Thad Lewis. A lot of ex-Eagles, you're right.
Yeah.
But you try. This will be the 5th time if they take a quarterback in the first round that they've tried to fix this position long term. It's not easy, and I think now they're going more the mentality of Seattle, which I think a lot of teams are doing. John Snyder, Pete Carroll, their mentality was, let's just keep rotating guys until we find the answer. And they finally found it with Russell Wilson. But they kept churning in guys, whether it was Charlie Whitehurst, whether it was Matt Flynn, Tavares Jackson. They just kept churning them in until somebody clicked. And that's what they're trying to do. I think they're bringing in RG3, and they're going to draft a quarterback. And if that doesn't work, they're just going to keep bringing body after body and hope somebody finally clicks.
There's some reports that the Browns haven't promised Robert Griffin III anything. I guess that opens the door for them to draft a guy. But did they bring in RG3 to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think they brought him in to start week 1. But
for that
doesn't
deal,
mean he's going to start week 8.
For that deal, for the deal that the Browns gave him, would you take that deal and Robert Griffin III or the deal that Bradford got?
Well, I would take, you know how I feel about Sam Bradford. It's not that I think he's a poor player, but the numbers that he got last year, this year.
I agree.
It's just not worthy of what he brings to the table. So, yeah, I would rather have the bargain simply because I know the answer's not there. And the answer might be in the draft, whether the Eagles trade up, whether the Browns take Wentz for that particular team. But you need a bridge to get to that point. I think with Chase Daniel on board, you probably would have just as good a bridge without the $22 million guaranteed. So if there's one contract that I look at that Howie Roseman has given out so far that doesn't make a ton of sense to me, especially...
Well, it's a one-year type of deal, though. They can get out of that deal.
Well, true. It's not a horrible deal long term, but it is a horrible deal for 1 year because it's $22 million guaranteed. So he's basically got to be the starting quarterback. You're not going to cut him and take that kind of hit. So for the short term, it's a bad deal, and you're usually not saying that about any contract with Howie Roseman, unless he's trying to put one over on Chip Kelly.
Isn't it disastrous, though? Let's say they draft Wentz at 8, and Bradford's just up and down mediocre. Isn't it just toxic to have a top 10 pick quarterback sitting there as the third stringer? I mean, the fans, if the team is 3-4, 7 games in, and Bradford's up and down, I mean, that's anarchy.
Well, especially in this market, you know how rabid this fan base is, and the minute they struggle, they're going to be calling for the rookie. So, yeah, I don't know how that's tenable to have him as a third-string quarterback unless you're successful. And we talk about mortgage in the future. That's where that future pick comes in. If you start Carson Wentz, you're almost raising the white flag on 2016. You're going to have a bad year. That's not to say it's a bad pick. It's not to say it's not going to work long term. But you know darn well you're not going to be a very good football team in 2016. So all of a sudden, that first-round pick, as I said, it's minimum top 10, could be top 5. Now, if you go the bridge route and say you're going to be average with Sam Bradford, 7-9, 8-8 again, well, all of a sudden that pick's at 13 to 15, 16, whatever. That's a little more palatable from the Eagles' perspective. But I just think this is pie in the sky. I don't think Howie Roseman is a mortgage in the future for Carson Wentz. I just can't see him doing it.
I hope not. I agree. I hope not. But it's weird that there's 4 teams and their name has specifically been one that was thrown into that mix. Now, in this article, it mentions the Eagles at 13. It did not update it to 8. I don't know if that was an oversight or what. But if they've now moved from 13 to 8, does that make it even more possible? I would assume getting closer makes it easier.
It certainly, yeah.
Sure.
It certainly makes it easier, but to make even the leap from 8 to 1, which is what they would have to do, and certainly the second part of the equation that makes sense is that Tennessee badly wants out of that pick because they don't want to. They obviously can't take a quarterback, and they don't want to be forced to take a left tackle with the number 1 overall pick. So they would love to trade out, and they're just trying to play off different teams. And I think the Dallas Cowboys, all of a sudden, and it fits Jerry Jones to a T because the guy has a good pro to hype starts, and he's buying into it. I could see the Cowboys come up to number 1 overall to ensure that they get the heir apparent to Tony Romo. I think it's too difficult even at number 8 to get up to number 1. It's not to say the Eagles don't like him as a prospect because they certainly do, but I don't think it's feasible, and I don't think Roseman's going to throw the kitchen sink like Chip Kelly would have done.
No, and I don't know. The Eagles are in a weird spot because I think Jason Peters kind of has them kind of held hostage here for a little bit because if he's on the roster, he's playing left tackle, right? I mean, they're not moving him anywhere. Lane Johnson's not playing anywhere else. So to take a tackle, you're either switching him into a position that he's not going to be familiar with, or you're sitting a guy for the first year. So I think they're kind of in an odd spot, even though they need a lineman.
Yeah, I mean, it is because obviously you're not going to draft a traditional guard at number 8 overall. And the guys who would be worthy of that pick whether it's Ronnie Stanley or you believe enough in Conklin or Decker, which I would not. Stanley's athletic enough to play guard for 1 year and then hopefully kick out the tackle. So I think if that's on the table.
How many years does Peters have left?
Well, he's got, I think it's 2. It could be 3, but he's got more than 1.
Yes.
But this is it. This is his last year.
Well, what if he plays at an all-pro level?
He's still going to have to redo his deal because the number's too high. So he's going to have to, if he wants to continue to play, he's going to have to restructure his deal. And anytime you get into that kind of territory, and remember, he'll be 34 years old at that point.
2018.
So the Eagles aren't going to be, the Eagles aren't going to be willing to give big time money to a guy in his mid-30s who's got this history of injuries.
Okay, I get that.
That's just not the way you do business.
I get that, but okay, he's 34. He's got 3 seasons left on his deal. Sure, okay, you got to ask him to take a pay cut, but then even if he takes a pay cut, let's say he plays for free, he's still on the roster playing left tackle.
Well, I agree with that. Hey, you know what? It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for Jason Peters to play at an all-pro level this year. Ronnie Stanley to fit in at left guard so you don't have to worry about Alan Barber any longer. You have Brooks at right guard. You have Lane Johnson. You have Jason Kelsey. That shapes up on paper as one of the best offensive lines in football. And if Peters continues to play at an all-pro level and you can convince him to play the next season at, say, $5 million a year, you wait another year. You have Ronnie Stanley for a long period of time. So it's the same thing with the original plan, which was to kick Lane Johnson over to be the heir apparent. In this case, you have it with an even younger guy, an even more athletic guy who projects to be a real top-tier left tackle if everything works out. I think it would hardly be the worst thing in the world if that's the way the Eagles went.
John, the Eagles moved from 13 to 8 in that trade, and that's all they got back. So does that tell you that they would not trade back in the draft since they traded up, and that's all they got in the trade?
Well, remember, the second part they got in the trade was they got rid of the contract of Byron Maxwell, which was the bigger aspect of it. And Chico Alonso, from everyone I talked to, was kind of a throw-in because his contract was certainly not an issue. And if anything, I think the Eagles would have preferred to bring him back just to see if he does have anything left physically. But to get rid of that contract, you weren't going to get a lot back, and the fact that they were able to flip spots, and that's significant. In the first round of the NFL draft, moving up 5 spots is significant. So I think it was good value for what they attempted to do.
I agree with that. I agree with all that they got a good deal to move up, but does that then preclude them from moving back if they get a deal on draft day that someone says, hey, we want 8, you move back, and we'll give you something else? I mean, maybe they get that second-round pick back. So is that the thinking that maybe we move up, somebody else wants our 8, and we take their second to get back, to go back a little further?
Well, anytime you accumulate picks, it's good. There's no question about that. You never say never in this league. But I believe Howie Roseman's been consistent and said the Eagles believe that the top portion of this draft, there's 10 really, really good players. And obviously, if they're at number 8, they're going to be able to get one of the top 10 players on their board. So I don't think their mentality is to trade down. All of a sudden, you look at need positions. I know there's so many mock drafts that have Ezekiel Elliott going to the Eagles at number 8 overall. I just don't believe that. I don't think the position values that. I don't think the Eagles value that position, despite what Howie Roseman said. And the second fact, I don't think Elliott is an Adrian Peterson type or even a Todd Gurley type. I think he's a notch below that, and he doesn't belong in the top 10 of the draft. So it's very, very conceivable that at number 8, they will not get a player at a need position. And unfortunately, Brian Billick's the guy who says it best, that he constantly says need is the worst talent evaluator in sports. So if you're worried about filling a particular position at number 8 overall, you're making a mistake. If you got 10 players who you think are going to be stars in this league, you take the top player left on no matter the position, and you let the chips fall where they may. And I think that's what the Eagles are going to do.
It's what the Sixers keep doing.
the chips haven't fallen right. But you know what? In the Sixers' perspective, the Sixers, a lot of it, as much as I criticize Sam Hinkie, I'll admit, a lot of it's just bad luck. And the fact that they had these top draft choices in years where the draft just wasn't that good. And all of a sudden, it's not necessarily the wrong decision, it's just that these guys aren't that good. And there isn't a difference maker. There isn't that change. But the Eagles believe in this particular draft, if there's 10 really good players, by definition, you're going to get one of them no matter how draft night falls.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. He has a ton of Eagles offseason news and notes. Go to the must-read section at the top of the page. Click on McMullen's Eagles coverage and read his story about former Eagles fullback Kevin Turner, who passed away yesterday at the age of 46 as he died from ALS, but he believes that football had a big part in that as that conversation continues throughout this very interesting time for the NFL with player safety. And then, of course, yesterday, Bruce Arians came out and said, go out and play. Football's in they're in a war zone right now. I don't know that it's going to be, I don't know when it will be affected, but John, it's going to be soon. At one point, this game is going to, something's going to have to happen.
Yeah, I think it's more of a generational problem because I think you have an entire generation that's growing up now that you have parents that are going to steer their kids away from the game. And that's not going to be noticeable next year or the year after, but 20 years down the line, if your feeder system is basically cut off because nobody wants to allow their children into the game, that's going to have a drastic effect. The question is, how does it develop? I mean, I believe adults should be able to play this game and should be able to make the decision. I think people who want to ban football, I think are off base. But at the same time, there's no question football's not good for you. If you play this game long enough, you're going to get hurt. And whether it's an ACL or a broken collarbone or a concussion, you're going to have issues playing this game, and anybody who tries to tell you differently is lying to you.
Well, good stuff from John. Have a good weekend, man. Happy Easter to you, and we'll catch up on Monday, I'm sure. I think the Eagles will try to trump Easter and make some more news.
He certainly will. The Easter Bunny isn't getting the front page from the Philadelphia Eagles.